Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Lee, lead admin evangelist at Salesforce, and welcome to the December episode of Automate This, our last episode of the year. In this episode, we're going to show you 2 real-world use cases solved with screen flows. So if this is your first episode of Automate This, this is a monthly series showcasing trailblazers like you doing some amazing things with automation. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. So the best way to be notified when we live stream is to set the reminder on the live stream episode page. You'll get an email reminder the day of the event. And to interact during the live stream, post your comments in the chat. Interact with our other viewers, and to engage me and my guest presenters, start your question with a Q: so that we can quickly scan through and identify and answer your questions during the Q&A. So here's what you will learn in today's episode from our 2 guest presenters. 3 things that you will learn from Aleks is how to use dynamic forms in Flow, how to improve efficiency with streamlining processes in screen flows, and then we'll talk about reactive screen current limitations. 3 things you'll learn from Dirk is how to use the behind-the-scenes get and create record elements to simplify your user experience, how to use conditional visibility, and how to avoid duplicates using decision elements and fault paths. All right, so I'm excited to have on today's broadcast Salesforce MVP Aleksandra Radovanovic back on Automate This, and welcome first-time presenter Dirk Keaton. Aleks will show us how she used the screen flow to handle trust incident management, and Dirk will show us how he built a screen flow to log interactions with Soup Kitchen clients on a mobile app. So welcome, Dirk, and welcome back, Aleks.
Hey, Jen. It's nice to be here.
Great.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to start off with Aleks first. So Aleks, for viewers who don't know you, how did you get started with Salesforce, and when did you get started with automation? Cloud Flow Designer or Flow Builder?
Oh, that's a question for all of us. I started working with Salesforce in 2014. I initially didn't really want to learn Salesforce. I use Salesforce to manage my job application for other jobs, but I guess I just fell in love with the system, started learning it more, and then decided this is what I want to do for a living. As for the automation, I think I was fascinated from the start. Not just because automation can save us a lot of time, as we all know, but also because it can improve user experience. And Dirk and I are going to show just that today. I started with Cloud Flow Designer and was totally mind blown when the Flow Builder came in 2019.
Great. So as I mentioned, Aleks is a return presenter. So if you missed her previous 2 episodes, watch them using the short links that you see on the screen. So what's the coolest automation that you've built?
It's been a long time since I started building automation, but I have to say that one of them that is still near and dear to my heart is back in 2017. I was working for a large company that had big churn of sales and support agents, and reactivating and deactivating those users was a time-consuming process, especially because we needed to add them to different groups, assign licenses. So we had a cloud flow designer back then. Record type was called as object type. So, but I was actually able to use that and build a flow that was automating creation of the users. So, sales manager or support manager would just come and fill in some of the information and click on a button, and the user will be created. That flow also send an email notification to the admins to review the user record and then activate it. So that shortened the onboarding time from 1 day to actually 1 hour. Same went through the same when goes for the activation process. The activation was just in within minutes. So I think from the difference that it made with the time difference and the productivity, I still think that one is the coolest one.
Great. And for those out there, when I reference Cloudflow Designer versus Flow Builder, Cloudflow Designer was the old UI before Flow Builder, which was there was a very steep learning curve for Cloudflow Designer for sure. All
Totally
right,
agree.
well, thanks, Aleks. All right, we're going to move on to Dirk. Hi, Dirk. Can you share with us a little bit about your Salesforce journey, and then also how did you get started with automation, and did you start with Cloudflow Designer or Flow Builder?
Sure thing. Well, I'm a total Axonil admin. I work for So Others Mighty, which is a DC-based nonprofit. We serve about like 5,500 residents a year, and I get to work with all our programs like mental health, housing, and emergency services. But I started off in our job training program. I was actually the math teacher, and
Oh,
I like stats, and so pretty much when we got Salesforce, I was just really locked in, learning all I can, really enjoying it. And so I sort of moved more away from the instructional role and more onto the admin side. And that was in 2017, I think I said. And I made my first flow the following year. But I really didn't, the UX wasn't as intuitive. And so I didn't spend as much time in that. And really what changed with me was, I think, the Winter 22 update, when there was a lot more updates to the interface, and also there was the send email action. And I remember at the time we had a bunch of students who wanted confirmation on whether they'd completed certain requirements they needed to graduate. And so I was like, easy solution to my problem. So made a send email action that would just update students when we signed off on various requirements. It was a big hit. And so I was just off to the races. Been making a lot of automations ever since.
great. And what was your coolest automation that you've built so far?
Okay, this one's a little hard to explain, but I'm going to try. So some serves as a mailing address for over 1,000 DC residents, and that's a super important service because you can't get an ID or social security benefits or your tax return right if you don't have an address, and a lot of people don't. And before we moved the process into Salesforce, they were managing all the incoming and outgoing mail through a spreadsheet, and that was really cumbersome. It was hard to teach, and obviously, you really couldn't report on like incoming, outgoing mail. But I worked with the community resources team to make a screen flow, and where you could log in all the mail transactions. And there are a lot of fun features, but I'm most proud of the pickup function. When you put in a client's name, what it would do is it would use a get records element to find all the mail deliveries for that particular client, and then it would use a loop and a display text formula to show the users how many letters and packages that client had, what dates the letters arrived on, and whether we were holding important documents like IDs. And it just made the process really simple, really straightforward, and easy to teach.
That sounds great. All right, well, thanks for sharing. All right, so back to you, Aleks. Can you share with us your use case and then how you built it?
Yes, I would be happy to. So, working for identity management company actually made me realize how important it is to keep customers up to date about different incidents, outage, and schedule maintenance. And it's essential to not only let customers know what is happening, but also capture the complete and accurate information and then provide updates in a timely manner. So, furthermore, it's also crucial to capture all the relevant information for the purposes of internal audit and service reporting. So today I'm going to show you how I use the power of the ScreenFlow to streamline and improve process for the system tracking and for the recording and reporting of the records that are capturing information about the incidents, maintenance, and outage. So let me share my screen. So this is my Salesforce demo org. And before we actually went with the power of the ScreenFlow, what we had is we just had a trust incident records. And what support agent would do, they would actually go to the incident page and they would click on create new record, and then they would have this page presented to them. The problem with this one was that there is just all sorts of fields displayed on this page, and not all of them are relevant for the process of the record creation. Some of them are for the status change when the support incident or when the maintenance record should be closed or status updated. So it ended up with having a lot of dirty data. So incidents were created with a lot of information missing or information being incorrect. So we thought about having some way to automate this process. So what we have done, we initially went with the old version of the ScreenFlow before the flow team brought us all the magic. So don't be scared, but this is the initial flow that we had. It's gigantic. As you can see, there's a lot of screen elements in it. So that means there's just a lot of clicks, too many clicks to create one record. So we went for a while with this, but again, it was cumbersome. The more point of the decision that you have the more risk of something failing. So once we have heard about the power of dynamic forms coming into ScreenFlows, we actually went with a whole new ScreenFlow that we built, and I'm going to show you that today. But before we dive into the ScreenFlow, let's look how this experience looks for the end user. So what I have done is I have created an incident creation app. So this is a simple way for the agents to know where to go and how to create an incident instead of looking for an object and trying to find and looking for a button to click. They just have the whole app assigned to them, and what you see on the screen is ScreenFlow just placed on the home page of this app. So how would they do it? So and as you can see, this screen starts pretty simple. There is a incident time and date, and we can choose any time date. Let's say that we had an incident yesterday, and let's say it starts at 11 a.m. And then on the right side, we have different types of the incident we want to create. We can choose if we're going to create a record for the outage, or for a security incident, or for the maintenance. And this is where dynamic forms comes into play. Depending on the type that we choose on the right side, we will have screen presenting us with a different set of fields that are relevant only for this type. So let's say I'm going to create a security incident. So immediately I am presented with a set of fields that are relevant for the security incident. In case I want to create a maintenance records, I have a much smaller set of fields that are just relevant for this type. So for the sake of demo, let's go and create security incident. We need to have a type. Let's say incident happening now, not too informative, but still something. And then for the status, we will put investigating because we are just creating this incident. We have the option to select service feature here. And the power of conditional visibility is really helping us keep this process streamlined. So under service feature, if I select core service, I would be immediately presented with the subservice option. In case I go with a third party, that subservice option is not relevant for us. So let's go with the core service, and we will select core platform. We can select the expected impact. We can select what are the actions taking. Let's say we are isolating impacted time zones. And then we have another information that will select the impacted cells. The impacted cells information is coming from the other system. So that's not information that's living in Salesforce. It's been pulling from the third-party service. And as you can see, this does not say a lot. These are just the cell names. So we will use the power of formula to translate these impacted cells names into something that will give information to the user that they understand. So we will see that in a minute, but let's say I will select one of the cells. And when it comes to impacted audience, I have 3 choices. But once again, we have the conditional visibility here. So if I select admins, I will be presented with the checkbox to say if it's impacting all the org admins. I can add other members of the audience, but if I remove the admins, that checkbox will not be there. So let's say I will add admins and say it's impacting all the org admins. Similar approach we have with the severity. So we do not want to email customers for all the severity levels, but if we go to high, the checkbox to email customers will be shown. And if this checkbox is checked, we will be sending email to customers and posting updates to the website. We can select engineering team. Let's say devices. And then we can just select when we're going to provide next update. I think 30 minutes is pretty reasonable. So once we have this information on this first screen, we can click on next, and we will be presented with the summary screen. So this is a screen where we can see all the information that we entered. And as you can see, we have impacted cells here that were translated into a name that will mean something to our user. We have category that was selected based on that's also a formula that was populated based on the other choices. And we have the option to display that email notification will be sent. As you remember, this was just a checkbox, but based on the value of the checkbox, we are putting this information here. So why are we doing this? We are creating this record that will be sent via email to some of the customers, but we are also posting this information to our trust website. So as you can see, we have a little section here that says, this is what you populated, and based on the choice, this is the text that we are saying. So we are saying, giving a time and date, and saying that the team that we selected has become aware of the issue related to the product that we filled. What we also are offering as an option to our support agents is to change this text. So we provide the template, we provide the information, but in case they want to add something, that will be posted on the website. They have this rich text field, and as you can see, we have the option to format this. So HTML tags, that means that the text that we are creating here will be posted nicely formatted to the website. So after the agent goes through this and review all the information and they're okay with posting this, they can check the checkbox to agree that they double check the data. So they can click on next, and that's it. That's the whole thing. 2 clicks and few select options. So let's click on this record, on the link, and see the record that we just created. So we are using power of dynamic forms even on the record page. So we are displaying only fields that are relevant for this record type. We only have one landing page with the conditional visibility on the fields. So we can see that we have our incident number, which is auto-generated field. We have the title, date, and all the relevant information. On the bottom side, we have the log information, which is the text that's going to be displayed on the website. So let's look at how this is all built. So this is the flow, and it looks pretty simple, right? It has 8 elements, but the power of this flow is in the first screen element. So if we look at this screen, we have just one screen that is utilizing, first of all, dynamic forms. So dynamic forms are giving us the option that we don't have to go and create variables and capture the value of the fields and then go and assign them. What we are doing, we're actually using the information from the variable. So I'm using the incident record, and I'm presenting with a list of the fields that I can choose to display on my page. So this first section is visible to everybody. This is the one that we are presenting after we open the app. because we need to capture this information. But these radio buttons are what is going to determine what will be shown. So if you look at the incident impact section, we can see that our component visibility is set that it will be shown only if we select the security incident on the radio button. Same goes for the outage section. In the outage section, we are displaying only based on that value, and on the maintenance section. So I have just one screen element that is showing all these values based on the selected values on this same screen. We can look at this component as well. So I mentioned dynamic visibility. So we are displaying this checkbox only if the incident record impacted audience contains admin. And if you look at, let's say this field, this is actually field from the records. So if you look on the right side, you can have field information, you can have what's the data type, and I don't have to set this is a multi-select pick list. So I don't have to select the values here. I don't have to define them within the flow. Flow is actually using this field from the record. And as I mentioned, because we are using dynamic forms and conditional visibility, I have the option to, on the incident section, set conditional visibility for the email customers only if the severity is high or critical. For outage, we want to email every customer. We don't have any condition. So I can also put the field without any field visibility condition. Same goes for maintenance. We want to notify all the customers about the maintenance. So there is no conditional visibility here. So this screen provides us a lot of flexibility. So once we fill the values on this field, on this screen, we will be going through the assignment, and based on the radio button, we will assign what is the incident type. And then this is the screen that we show the summary. Once again, we are using one screen for all the 3 record types. So for the incident record, we are also putting conditional visibility. It's going to be shown only if the record type, if the type of the incident is security incident. Same goes for the outage and for the maintenance. And as you can see, we are capturing different information, different field values. As you can see here, and we will see that shortly, some of this information is not being captured through the interface, but we are using formula fields to populate this value that will be displayed on the screen. I'll come to that in a minute. But this is, and as I mentioned, this is the rich long text area that is going to be presented. So this part can actually be changed if you want to add more information to be displayed on the screen. Because we need to handle errors in the flow, I'm using Apex action here. So this is a validation checker created by Eric Smith, and this is a really neat piece of Apex code that you can download from unofficial flow page, or you can go to GitHub and download the code from there and install in your org. Eric Smith did a really, really nice way. It's very user friendly to add this to your org. But what this code is doing, it's actually looking for any of the errors that might happen during the flow, during my incident record, and then it's displaying error message in a user-friendly way. So once my flow goes through this Apex action, check if there's any validation errors. I'm looking at if there's any is there any output from the check validation? And if there is, I will go back to my initial screen, and here at the top, I will display the validation error message. So my user can go back. This screen will show the value they already filled, and it will just give them the option. So let's say they forget to fill something. There's a mandatory field, there are dependency fields. As I mentioned, we have service and subservice. In case they forgot to fill the subservice, they will be presented here with a message to select subservice. So once we have that, we are going to the create records simple component that is just creating a record based on the value that we gathered in the screen. And the last screen we have in the flow is just the confirmation screen where we are providing the incident URL for the newly created record. And as I mentioned, we are using a power of formula as well. So I have 4 formulas. One of them is to, as I mentioned, impacted cell names. So we are getting all the cell names from this outside system, and these names do not mean anything to our customers. So we have a long formula field just depending what's being shown and what we will display to the customer. We also have this option to select, do we want to display the send email to the customers? If we check the checkbox, we will put this user-friendly information on the website. If the checkbox is not checked, we will post the information that the communication will not be sent. And when we talk about those templates that are going to be shown that can be edited, I have this little logic that is looking what is the incident status that's being put, and based on the status, we have different templates. We can look at one of the template. So let's say this is investigated status template. So this is just a text that has a lot of embedded fields that are populated through the screen flow. So this text is going to be presented for agents to review, to edit, or just to confirm that it's going to be shown on the screen. Once we have, so one of the limitations that I seen here, because I wanted to use the reactive screens as well, is that a long text area is still not available in the reactive screen. So that's one of the limitations I learned about. But I heard that the Flow team is working on that, so I can't wait to see that update. So back to you, Jen.
All right. I loved your presentation with the dynamic forms. I love that in Lightning record pages, and was so happy when the Flow team brought that in as an enhancement because, like you said, before we had to create variables for like each screen element, which is very time consuming, when now all you need to do is just drag over the field that you want and all the attributes are there. And if someone goes into Object Manager and makes updates to those attributes, they're automatically updated in your flow. So you don't have to then make sure that both things are in sync. So that's a real time saver for admins for sure.
Exactly.
And thanks for your presentation, Aleks.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to Dirk. And before we move on to you, I do want to address a question that came in through the chat, which was a request to slow down a bit. We are recording this episode, so you will be able to go back and watch it again. And also tomorrow on admin.salesforce.com, the blogs that accompany both Alex's and Dirk's presentations will also be available. So you'll be able to do a deep dive into the very details of what was presented. So back to you, Dirk. So can you share with us your use case and show us how you built it?
Sure, absolutely. So, one of the oldest services, it's been around since the 1970s, at some, was our dining room. And it serves about 250 unique clients each day. And for many of our clients, the dining room is sort of the front door, the first step before accessing some of our higher touch services like healthcare or counseling or housing. And for some of our clients, they make that move very quickly, and for others, they may have spent years in the dining room without taking the next step. And so, to ensure that people do that and get the things they need, we hired a peer support specialist who basically goes out in the dining room, performs some light case management, and then refers clients to services. And one thing, we have about over 150 staff who are entering information into Salesforce, including a lot of client case notes, and we wanted to make sure that that basically the peer support case notes were in the database along with all our other client interactions. And so I met with the integration team, who the specialist is on, and we identified some requirements. First, we wanted to make sure that the app would be accessible via tablet. This is obviously not a desk job. You're out in the field. So we wanted to make sure that we could have it work in that mobile environment. Second, we knew that a lot of dining room clients might not be as forthcoming about who they are, and so we wanted you to be able to enter partial client information and still initiate a record. And then finally, we wanted this to be very easy to teach or to learn. And so one of the ways we decided to do that was to do everything all in one screen. And so I'm going to pull this up and I'll show you how it works. And over here, you'll see I have a little Android emulator. It is going to be a bit slow, as you can imagine, but it will give you a good idea of how it works. And you see right here, we have a lookup where we can look up the name of an existing client, but we can also initiate a new client right here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call them DC Dining Room Client. And how about let's give them a suffix, senior, okay? And their mobile number is, we can just put that in. And let's say let's say they aren't willing to give a birth date or a gender, but that's totally fine because, like we said, we are totally comfortable with partial information over here. So the date of service will be yesterday. I'm going to say the meeting type was case management. And for the client note, we can say they need a new wheelchair. And so we will put their needs in as mobility and physical health. And we're going to refer them to the medical clinic. And let's say we have a warm handover, basically meaning we just walk the client over to there, and we'll hit next. And you'll see it'll think for a little bit, and it's going to be, and that was pretty quick actually, which is great. And so I'm going to refresh and show you the record we created. Give me 1 second while it loads. And as we can see, DC Dining Room Client is right here. And I'm going to open up their record. And we can see right now the client's been created. Their case note has been created. It has all of the information back here. And so what we can see is we essentially created 3 records on one screen. And our peer support our peer support specialist doesn't need to know our data model. They just know how to interact with the screen, and it totally serves its purpose. Now, before I go forward, it is important to talk about the data model for just a second. You probably noticed that the case note looks up to something called a program engagement. And some of you may be familiar with it, some may not be, but this comes from the program management module, which is a special tool developed by Salesforce. It's a free product for direct service nonprofits like mine. And I do want to give a quick shout out to Meg Gray, who's the product manager of the program management module. I got to meet her at Dreamforce, and she's fabulous, really, really insightful. And as you can see, we've got the program engagement right here, and it looks to the client and to the program. So programs are all your service lines, like your dining room or peer support or your medical clinic. And then the clients are each person. And so what you're able to do is track service deliveries all under one program or all under one client and see how the clients interact with your program. It's a really cool tool. So going back to how it works now that we've seen it in action, is we have the screen, and I'm going to go just a little bit quick because like we said, much of it is in the blog tomorrow, and so you'll be able to see some specifics. Now, Aleksandra and I had a really similar philosophy behind our flows. As you can see, I used conditional visibility a lot. Whenever you see that little eye icon right there, that means that it's hidden unless it meets certain conditions. And you can see my condition is all these client variables are going to show up if add client value equals true. And I just wanted to mention this because add client, that's a toggle right here. And when a toggle is switched on, that's equal to true. That might not be the most intuitive thing, so I wanted to point that out. And you can see we've got a record variable down there, so I pulled all these fields directly into there. And then down here, you can see we did another record variable for peer support case note, which is a custom object that we created. And if you want to learn more about that, the details of that custom object are on the blog. But yeah, laid out in a very similar to way to what Aleksandra showed you. Now from here, as you can see, this is an enormous flow. And I'm sure Jen's eyes popped a little bit when she saw this but the thing is, this flow has to do a lot. We have to find or create a contact. We have to find the program. We have to find or create a program engagement. And then finally, we have to create a case note and tie it to that program engagement. So lots of little steps. Now, the first thing we do is you see it goes to this add client decision element. And what this will do is basically test to see whether we switched on add a client, whether we're adding a new client to it, and it'll also test to see whether we filled out the birth date. And if we filled it out, it's is null false. You can't do a has any value or, isn't. And so how you do it is null false, not blank. So just want to point that out. And so if they have a birth date, it goes to the next step. If they don't have a birth date, it's going to go over to set default birthday. And it's going to, it's going to give them the standard value of January 1st, 1970. That's what we give all our anonymous clients. And you can see that we do this because birth date is a required field in our database. And this allows us to have anonymous clients without breaking any of the rules of our Salesforce org. Next, we go through a very similar decision trying to see whether the name is blank or not, because last name is required. And if it is, then what we do is we're going to assign them an anonymous name. And this is a formula that'll basically make it peer support client, and then the date and time value. And we do date and time value because that way it doesn't create duplicates. We want to make sure that each anonymous client has their own record, so that way we can see how many anonymous clients we serve in a month. So once we've gone through those tests, we go over here and we actually create the record from the variable we just populated. Now, if that works successfully, we're going to see it goes over to the contact ID assignment. And what this will do is this will take the ID of the contact we just created and pass it to a variable named contact ID variable. Now, we're going to be using the contact ID throughout the flow, so I want to make sure no matter if I get them in the lookup up there or if I create them, they're going to have the same variable, just so it's easier to reference later on. Now you do notice this down here, and it may be a little hard to see because it's covered up, but that is a fault path. And so I'm going to show you how you make one of these. And you probably notice that I am using the freeform flow. There's just different styles. Auto layout is good, but I think I just learned from so many people who use the freeform style, and so it's just very intuitive for me. So that's kind of how I work, but you can add a fault path either way. But what you do is after you connect something, you can click again and it'll create a fault path. And if you've ever gotten one of those emails from Salesforce saying basically your flow failed because you created a duplicate or your flow failed for some reason, then that is a fault. And normally that shuts your flow down. But if you have a fault, what it's going to do is it's just going to fire off the flow anyway. With whatever that next step is. And so we had a get records element right here. And what that's going to do is that is going to get the client who caused the conflict, who caused the fault. And so you can see we're looking for the first name, the last name, and the birth date, just so we can pull them in. And we're going to assign the contact the contact ID variable to them as well. So that way we can carry on. Now, there is something interesting going on with modified first and last name, and I really encourage you to look at the blog tomorrow because it's a little complicated, but worth checking out. Once we go there, regardless of which path we took, including if we had a lookup right here, we're going to get the program because we want to enroll them in that program. And so what we have right here is we just look for name equals peer support, and that's all we need to do for them. That part's pretty easy. Now, you may have noticed back here on the contact ID assignment that I had a variable right over here called created flag. And if the record is successfully created, it's going to assign the value of yes to created flag. Now, one thing that you see right here is we have all these pink elements, and these are what developers would call database methods. They're basically things that make changes or make big searches in your database, and we want to avoid those as much as possible because they slow down your flow. And so we do a little test right here, and we basically test to see, was that record, was created flag, does that equal yes? If it does, well, we know this is a brand new record, so they aren't going to have a program engagement. So we skip all the steps and we make one. Now, let's say they're an existing client. Then it turns out they might already be enrolled in peer support. So it's going to go look for that client's program engagement. And so it's going to, let me fire this up. Okay, and you can see that it's going to look for a program engagement with the contact ID variable that we have established, and also the program that we just found. And if we do, we assign the value, its ID to PEID, which is just going to be the variable we use to hold that ID. Now, once we have looked for that, if we found anything, then that's what we're going to tie the case note to. Because if we remember, the case note has to look up to the program engagement. And so we do PEID is null false. Does it have some value? If it does, then we go down to the assignment element. I'm going to wait for the done to go down there. If it is blank, if we didn't have an ID, then we're going to go right over to create program engagement. And you'll see we're just going to make one. And we'll use the contact ID variable we set up earlier, the program engagement ID, and then we're going to make the current date the start date for that client. Either way, we're going to take that program case note we made earlier, or the peer support case note we made earlier, and assign its ID, its program engagement ID, and make that PEID. And then finally, we create a case note, and that just from the program engagement record that we established earlier on. And that's the flow in a nutshell. And I look forward to any questions you have. And thanks.
Awesome demo, Dirk. So again, component visibility, I love in record pages, and I just love having it there in Flow as well, so that you're really creating that simplified user experience for your users. So it's not, okay, I'm going to show you all the possible fields that I'm going to ask, and then you figure out which ones I need and which ones I don't. So that's just great.
Yeah, users get intimidated when they see a lot of fields. So the more you can provide them a clean look, the more excited they'll be to use the program.
Exactly. Well, thanks for sharing your demo. All right, so we're going to transition over to the Q&A section of this episode. So as a reminder, please start any of your questions with a Q:, so it's easy for me to identify your question amongst the chat that the audience is posting. So we'll be back in a second. Okay. We do have one question so far. And that is for Aleks. So can you again share where they could get access to Eric Smith's code on that validation role checker?
So unofficial flow page has a whole article about the validation checker by Eric Smith. I'm pretty sure if you reach out to Eric Smith on social media, I think he's on Twitter, he will be able to give you um, the feedback and the link. But Jen, we can also post the link to that GitHub page in the comment after this.
Great. And I don't recall if you included that in your blog post. I think we did include a link.
I think we did as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you check back tomorrow at admin.salesforce.com and look for Alex's blog within the blog post when she mentions Eric's code, then I think we're linking directly to unofficial SF to get that installation.
Yeah, and just to add, all the screenshots, all the flows that we show today are included in the blog post. So if you want to go and look in more details, you'll be able to do that tomorrow.
Excellent. All right. So I do want to recognize all the people that joined today from all across from the United States, Raleigh, Chicago, South Jersey. We have international, Madrid, Brazil, Germany, India, Poland. So that's just awesome that we're worldwide. And for the poll question that was asked, how do you rate your experience with ScreenFlows? I just want to do a quick recap. 61% of you who answered the poll said you're here to learn more. So thanks for joining us. Love that you're here to use Automate This to learn. 23 of you have dabbed your toe into it. So that's great. Continue learning. Hopefully watching Alex's and Dirk's examples will inspire you to continue to build ScreenFlows. And then 15% of you are experts. So really cool. All right. Let's see if there are any questions while we wait. What resources do the two of you suggest if, we have 61% who are out there and they're learning ScreenFlows? What do you suggest? How do they get involved?
I always suggest Trailhead as a really good hands-on tool to actually use. So a lot of resources you can go and the best thing is on Trailhead is you can actually follow the scenario. So follow and build in your own org. You're kind of building that muscle memory when building flows and also understanding how the processes are working and how you can apply those flows into your own business problems and your use cases at work. Dirk, what about you?
I would say Trailblazer community groups are really my that's my bread and butter. I think I tend to be I'm very involved in the DC admin group and the DC nonprofit group, and I feel like a lot of times I've been around longer than some folks, but I feel like you just learn people who are going to have maybe very specialized experience. And I think it's great where you can sit down with somebody who you know is good at a particular thing and just be able to bounce questions off them. And that peer learning has always been really attractive to me, especially since I'm a sole admin. And so as a result, a lot of times it's going to be either people in the Trailblazer community group or the people in the social media thread of Trailhead, that I'm going to that I'm going to be talking with, because they have a lot of peer perspective.
I think another good way is to get your personal developer environment and create, think of a use case in your own personal life and then build something really simple, right? To just play around with it, test it out, get more comfortable. But it's you coming up with your own requirements and playing around with that.
if you follow Dirk's advice and go to the Trailblazer community, you will see examples of what Jen just said. People are using their own developer orgs and flows to plan weddings or moving or vacation. So plenty of use cases.
Speaking of weddings, I actually built an app to manage my wedding. So I did do a screen flow to capture like the RSVP and did use component visibility and dynamic form. So I did all the things that we talked about today, and it was really fun putting that together. Again, it's your use case, so your requirements. But I highly encourage it. So
That's how Phonetics do wedding.
Yeah. So while we're waiting to see if you have any questions, again, post them and we can answer them live. It doesn't necessarily need to even be applicable to Alex's and Dirk's presentations. Like if you have just general automation questions, we're all Phonetics, so we can help out. Don't be shy in asking. So another question that I had for the two of you, what is your favorite flow feature outside of component visibility and dynamic forms that you both presented about?
I would have to say HTTP callout, mostly because it enables Phonetics and admins to do some of the things that we used to need developer for. So if you have an external service that you have to do some simple integration, some simple callouts, Flow now can do that. And there is a really nice demo that was shown during the release readiness live video in the last release, and I hope we'll see some of that in the upcoming release as well in the winter 24. So I definitely suggest that everybody try to play around with it, because it's something that will help you be more independent from a developer, especially if you're like Dirk and you're a solo admin, you don't have a developer in your org.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll add as well. I mean, loops are my. I love loops so much, and I feel like that was probably back when I was starting to learn. There weren't like a lot of resources on loops, and so I remember just when I was figuring it out, just doing the Breakfast Club fist pump when I got it right, because it was just so exciting. But I just think the ability to like very often, if you just need to change the record type of of like a whole bunch of contacts in your org, or you need to make us close all the tasks associated with a client who's no longer part of the who's no longer part of your organization. It's a great way to do it. I would say one more good learning resource I just thought of. This is a blog that sadly I think it's kind of lapsed, but it was really, really helpful for me. It's called Salesforce Flowsome, and it's just salesforce-flowsome.com. And I remember when I was starting out, that was one of the really good sort of normal language, sort of everyday. It just broke things down in a very intuitive way that I really wasn't seeing anywhere else at the time.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so we don't have any other questions. This is a pretty shy group today, so we're gonna continue on. All right, so let's recap what we learned from Alex's presentation: how to use dynamic forms in Flow, how to improve efficiency by streamlining processes in screen flows and reactive screens, current limitations. Then from Dirk, we learned how to use get and create record elements to simplify the overall user experience, how to use component visibility, love that feature, and how to avoid duplicates through decision elements and fault paths. And want to give a shout out to next month. So we're going to kick off 2024 on January 24th with Trailblazers, Corinne Riedman, and Warren Walters who will be joining me to show you how you can use Awesome Admin's superpower tools, custom settings, and custom metadata types in flows. So set the reminder on the live stream page now to be reminded when we live stream. And you could also learn after this episode, and let me just get rid of this here. All right. Learn from this episode by taking these reactions. Handle possible errors in your flows by building either a fault path or using validation roles, and complete the Trailhead module screen flows to, again, exercise that muscle of creating screen flows, and stay up to date with the latest flow enhancements by reading the release notes and watching Release Readiness Live. The short link that you see here will take you to the Winter 24 Flow Release Readiness Live. That's on Salesforce Plus. And get great content produced for you admins. Visit our website, admin.salesforce.com, to find the latest blogs, podcasts, and videos. Listen to the Salesforce Admins podcast hosted by Mike Gerhold and Jillian Bruce at all the places that you get your podcast content. And again, watch past episodes of Automate This via our playlist on the Salesforce Admins YouTube channel. And I want to thank you both for joining us on this Automate This episode, Dirk and Aleks.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
And thank you to all of you for joining us for this Automate This episode. Remember, the best way to be notified when we live stream is to set the reminder on the live stream episode page, and you get the email reminder the day of the event. And we'll post our upcoming sessions on all of our various social channels, so follow us on X at Salesforce Admins, LinkedIn, and the Trailblazer community. I also want to give a shout out to our chat coordinator, Jill Bivens. This is going to be her last episode with us as she moves on from the admin relations team to another team within Salesforce. We wish her the best. So thank you for being my moderator this year. So everyone give a shout out to Jill. And I hope you enjoyed this year's episodes. Stay safe, have a happy holiday, and a happy new year. And I will see you back here in 2024.